race relations?
You know, I kept saying a year ago that I really hope that they don't. I kept suggesting to Mr. Crump on 3 separate occasions that we not suggest that this is a civil rights case of the century, because it's just not. It was a self-defense case. Did it bring to the forefront the conversation that young black males are treated a certain way in the criminal justice system? Absolutely. Is that positive? Absolutely. Do we need to have that conversation? Absolutely. However, if portending that conversation on top of the Zimmerman verdict is going to affect our ability to have that conversation, shame on them, because that conversation needs to be had. And now it may not be had because we have sort of artificially separated the two camps, if you will, over this verdict. This verdict still has nothing to do with civil rights. Civil rights needs to be talked about, but not in the context of the George Zimmerman verdict.
Emily?
They suffered a tragedy. I've acknowledged that to the family on 3 previous occasions. Nothing can bring back Trayvon Martin. Every time any life is lost, particularly a young life, it's a tragedy. We hear about it in car accidents. We hear about it with cancer. I lost a 13-year-old niece to cancer. We hear about it constantly, and it's always a tragedy. But I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I think that the evidence supported that George Zimmerman did nothing wrong, and that he was battered and beaten by a 17-year-old who, for whatever reason, and we won't know, thought that he had to lash out and attack violently. And it turned out that all of the forensic evidence supports that. None of it supports that George was ever the aggressor, certainly not legally, and I don't believe morally. So did that end up leading to the tragic loss of life? Yes. Could it have been avoided? Yes. When it really came down to it, 45 seconds before the gunshot, when George was getting battered, I still believe that that decision was in Trayvon Martin's hands more than my client's. And as I mentioned, they get my greatest sympathies for their tragic loss of their son. No one should ever have to suffer losing a child, ever. The system, 2 systems went against George Zimmerman that he can't understand. You guys, the media, he was like a patient in an operating table where mad scientists were committing experiments on him and he had no anesthesia. He didn't know why he was turned into this monster, but quite honestly, you guys had a lot to do with it. You just did, because you took a story that was fed to you and you ran with it, and you ran right over him. And that was horrid to him. Then he comes into a system that he trusts. Let's not forget, 6 voluntary statements, voluntary surrender. And he believes in a system that he really wanted to be part of, right? And then he gets prosecutors that charge him with a crime they could never, ever prove. It's not like they didn't lose evidence along the way, right? So I don't think anyone would argue with me in this room that they had evidence of second-degree murder. This in-your-heart kind of stuff, that's not what we're supposed to do, and it's not what they're supposed to do. So those 2 systems failed them.
Thank you.
Thanks.